So Guinness flew us out to Ireland where they're hosting this huge event. Guinness, they have this open gate brewery where they do all these really cool different testings, different pairings of beers and stuff. And they have all these amazing chefs from around the world cooking up with meat, pairing it with beer. So I'm here, sorry Mike, you couldn't make it, sucks for you. But I'm here testing out all these amazing dishes. And I'm gonna take you guys on the journey, and then I'm gonna cook something with meat and beer so you guys get a nice takeaway of recipe gloriousness. And I don't even know what is happening here. Wow. All right, let us talk cooking with meat and cooking with beer. So Guinness sponsored this video and sent me out to Ireland to learn all about their beer, but I learned a lot about just cooking with beer in general and all the unique subtleties. Like if you get to know a beer that you really like, you might say, okay, this beer is really bitter, or this beer is like very hoppy, whatever it is. So in the case of Guinness, for example, I learned that they actually roast the barley. That's why it kind of has that chocolatey coffee thing going on, which is absolutely incredible for cooking. But whatever beer you're working with, you know, kind of understand the flavor profile of it, or just grab a beer out of your fridge and dump it in and see what happens. That's kind of, this video is sort of a blend of those two things. But I got to talk to the head brewer at Guinness. I got to talk to some other brewers. So there's two things about, you know, cooking with beer. One, there's obviously the cooking element, and then there's also the pairing element. So you can just be making a dish and pairing it. I got to learn a bit about the pairing from this awesome brewer named Steve. He's like a brother from another mother. Check it out.
When you're pairing beers to food, there's three different ways that you pair. There's something that complements. So in this situation, this complements the dish really well because we've got the melon hops and the melon in the dish. So that's how this one works. There's that option, then the other one is contrast, where you get something that are two completely different. So if you look at two ones down, we've got the Dot Saison. The Dot Brewery Saison pairs with Angie Marr's dish, and that's because it completely, like, it's a very much of a palate cleanser. Yeah. Where hers is quite a rich food. So that's because there's something that compares, something that contrasts, and you get another option which is cut. And the cut one is when you've got something that's like, say, an Indian dish, quite spicy, and you just want like a nice crisp lard, or just to, you know, clean, you know, just like cut right through it. Or I like your little sister.
You like that? That's pretty cool, right? Do you have any other thoughts? Steve, that was awesome getting to learn about the different ways of pairing, but I actually got to talk to the head brewmaker at Guinness and talk to him about different ways of actually cooking with beer. And you know, in the case of Guinness, just understanding the flavor, knowing that it's bitter, but it's got that sort of chocolatey, roasty flavor is great for cooking with meat and even making bread. So the first thing I'm going to do is make this epic slow cooked beef. And what's great about beef is if you take a cheap cut and you cook it low and slow with lots of flavor, you're going to get something that tastes like $1 million frickin' bucks. So in terms of the pairing of the beer with the burger, how did you figure that out?
Well, basically with the burger, like any kind of pale ale, it's definitely got the kind of bitter hoppiness to it. So we wanted something like that to kind of to pick up on the Guinness that's in the glaze for the bacon. So it kind of touched into that bitterness. But at the same time, it can hold its own and kind of cut through the richness of the cheese and the bacon and the beef itself.
And that bacon, oh my God.
Yeah.
So without further ado, I whipped up the most epic sandwich of all time. And I don't say this lightly because I am a sandwich connoisseur. I grew up eating meat, bread, cheese, sauce on, like, every meal had to somehow be that because I just love sandwiches so much. So I wanted to craft the perfect sandwich for you guys using meat and beer. So for this beef recipe, I was walking around with Adam Richmond. Him and I just kind of hit it off. He was telling me his favorite thing to do is to cook with Guinness and just use like some oyster sauce, maybe some aromatics, and just boom. So I'm kind of taking the inspiration from that. Thank you, Adam. And I'm going to whip up something epically awesome. You know, and I'm taking about a 3-pound chuck roast, took the beef, popped it in the slow cooker, added some onions, garlic, ginger, cinnamon sticks, clove, some bacon, honey, some oyster sauce, salt, pepper, and then of course, Guinness. And the reason that I used the honey is because I was talking to one of the chefs there, and he made this thing where he cooked down bacon and honey, and he made this like sauce with it that he just sprinkled on top of the burger. Oh, it was one of the best burgers I had ever had. I was like licking the bun. So slow cook that down. It took me about 3 or 4 hours. You know, you could set it overnight and wake up to something beautiful, or go to work and put it in there and wake up to something, or come back from work to have this amazing epic sandwich. But I slow cooked it until it was just completely shredding and pulling and pulling and pulling. I like it when it has a little bit of chew to it, so I'm not going to cook it for like 8 or 9 hours. But I took it out, with all the bacon and kind of shredded it up. And then all the excess liquid, I just sort of let that cook in a pot, and I didn't even shoot it, but I just kind of boiled that down to make it really thick, because that's going to be the glaze I'm going to put on top of the bread, just like he did with that sort of honey glaze, because that is what separated the sandwich to me from everything else there. Next up is this beer bread I'm going to make. Now Mike is much more into like the making his homemade beer and making his homemade bread. He has lots of videos on that. I'm more of a winger kind of guy, you know. I'm sorry you couldn't make it, Mike, sucks for you. So what I did was I took a nice big bowl, I added some yeast to that, added some sugar, some salt, about 3 cups of flour, and then 1 can of Guinness. And you'll notice in the video I use 2 different types of Guinness. This is the classic draft. I also use this extra dark stout. So it depends on sort of what you're going for, but whatever Guinness you could find, it's totally cool. Just get a sense of the flavor. So I poured in 1 can of the Guinness draft, which is like the classic Guinness that we all know. And I just mixed it around, and yes, while there's a science to baking, there's also an experimentation to it. So no matter what you do, you can come up with something great. You know, you might not get this perfect thing the first time, but I'm kind of feeling it out and I'm flowing with the vibes. That's what cooking is all about to me, getting in the kitchen, having fun, and just flowing with it. So I mixed that all around and kind of made it into not quite a dough. You're not kneading this. This is a no-knead dough, which is amazing. So it's going to be a little bit more liquidy, like a thick liquid. Cover it with saran wrap, and then I let it sit for about 6 hours while the meat was cooking. You could do overnight. They say like at least 8 hours typically. That way, since you're not it's kind of kneading itself while it's sitting in there. But I was getting impatient and I really wanted to eat this, and I wanted just to not be eating super late night. So if you're worried about that, just let the dough proof the night before. So once that sat for about 8 hours, you'll see it rise a lot, lots of air bubbles going, and that's how you get the nice excitement in there. So I added some flour and kind of just mixed it around and mixed what I consider to be resembling like some kind of loaf shape a little bit. So I let that kind of proof. I covered it, let it proof for another 30 minutes while I got Mr. Oven nice and hot. And if you had a Dutch oven, that would be great. You would pop that in, get the oven as hot as you can go, you know, 500, 550 degrees, get that thing blasting. But I only had a big pot, so I put the pot in there, let it get hot, because otherwise if you put everything in cold, it's gonna bring the temperature down. You want it super hot to get the nice crust. So once that got to preheating and the dough was sitting about 30 minutes, I just carefully flopped the dough right into this hot pan. No oil in there, no flour or anything, just plop it right in, throw it covered right into your oven, and then just let it cook for about 30 minutes. So once you've got it cooking for about 30 minutes in there with the lid on, take it out, smell it, get really excited, but do not eat it yet. Just take the lid off, put it back in, lower the temperature to about 350. Now you're gonna kind of develop that crust and sort of finish it off. And at this point, depending on what kind of crust you want, you can do 5 or 10 minutes or 30 minutes. It's all gonna depend on, you know, how big the loaf is, and just play around, feel it out, like flow, and just trust yourself. If for some reason you cut into it and it's not done, you can throw it back in. I know people just want this perfect, beautiful food porn shot, but for your own sake, if you mess up, it's okay, you can always fix it. Once that was done, I put it on a rack to let it cool, and it looked so freaking beautiful. So this dish was inspired by one of the chefs. She made this amazing doner kebab kind of pita sandwich thing where she had the huge meat thing that was spinning in slow motion at the beginning. And she had this awesome sauce. It was like this smoky, like red pepper, spicy kind of sauce. So I wanted to make something similar to that. So what I did was I took some mayo, I took some blended up chipotles and adobo, some vinegar, some ketchup, some chili flakes, and some black pepper. And you can kind of use whatever you want. This is all just about mixing and tasting. Anything with mayo and spice and vinegar is gonna be freaking delicious. But the chipotle is gonna add some smokiness because I don't have my grill, which is cool. It's a way to impart some smokiness into that sandwich, and you'll be loving heaven for life. One thing that was really cool about Guinness that I appreciated was that they have this open gate brewery, and there they're doing all these testing. So maybe you think of Guinness and you think of like just the Guinness beer that you know, but they actually bring in all these amazing beer makers. So they had local beer there, and they were pairing local beer with some of the dishes. And I thought that was cool because they're supporting the community of beer makers, and just testing out new things, trying out new flavors. There's some really cool like smoky beers and ales and hops or whatever. My mind was like on overwhelmed, just like, how is this happening? But it was such a cool event. And one of the biggest things I took away is, to be completely honest, I really appreciate beer. I'm not like this huge drinker. I don't party and go crazy, but like I do like to drink responsibly, as they say in the ads. But it's true, like I find that if you find a beer you like and you really learn to appreciate it, you can sit there, you can sip on the beer and just get a sense of the flavor. It's so unique Every beer has its own craft process. Like I said, my brother did a beginner's guide to beer, so if you want to learn about making your actual beer, you can check that out. But anyhow, back to the recipes. On to the pickle, because no sandwich is properly good without some delicious pickle. Pickled red onions are amazing, and they're so easy, and they always taste like, how did you do this? But it's really easy, and I'm gonna demystify, show you guys that right now. So this wasn't on any of the sandwiches either, but in the doner kebab, she had this sort of watermelon cilantro salad that was really nice and pickled and added like a really nice freshness to all that meat. I made a pickling solution, which I didn't even bother showing. Really simple: some vinegar, water, salt, sugar, coriander, black peppers, and I kind of just cook that very quickly until the sugar dissolves, let that cool, and then once it's cool, slice up some red onions really thin, toss them in, let them pickle overnight. Even a couple hours they'll be great, but you'll see they change color, they get like super kind of purpley red. That's when you know they're good to go and they're gonna be amazing in your sandwich. Also, it's great to have in your fridge. You can, if they sit for the months and they get more and more pickled, and you can put them on anything that you want. So I had to get some green on there. One thing that I was missing in Meatopia from some of the spots, it was just meat, and while I love meat, I also appreciate my greens and the balance of it. So I wanted to cook with some collard greens. So the first thing I did was I took a pan, sauteed up some garlic. You can kind of crush it or mince it, whatever you want. We're just chilling and flowing in here. Then I add some frozen collards. You could, of course, use some fresh collard greens, but I just threw it frozen. I got them in a nice bag. They sit in the Mr. Freezer for a long time, nice and well and gloriously. Then let that cook for a bit. I added in some beer, a little bit of water, some salt and pepper, and kind of cook that down. And at that point, just give it a taste. See, like, taste it, and it's delicious. The longer you cook the greens, you know, they'll braise in that beer and develop a really nice flavor. All right, it is time to build this most epic and glorious sandwich. So first off, once the bread's sat for maybe 30 minutes, you kind of let it cool down. Even an hour would be great, but I really didn't have the time to wait. I was too excited. So I slice into that bread, and you get to see the nice cross section. I see that's pretty good for just kind of fooling around and having fun. The bread was so delicious on its own. Oh, with a little bit of like honey and butter and some salt. Oh, are you kidding me? So basically had that all nice and sliced up. Then I added 2 types of cheese. On the burger, he had this amazing blue cheese that him and Adam were like raving about. So I took some blue cheese. I also took some cheddar. I just felt like if it's gonna be an epic burger, just why not go for it? And I kind of put them on the bread and then flame them with a torch just to, you could toast them or whatever, but just to melt the cheese. Then I added a bunch of that pulled meat. I added some greens, some of those pickled onions, and that sauce on top. I topped the bread, and then I took that juice that had been braising, all the liquid and honey and everything that I had been cooking down, and just kind of spoon that right over the top. I didn't have my paintbrush, but I would have painted it right on. And oh my lord, this sandwich, when I took a bite, I was just blown away by the taste of it. The meat, the pickle balances with the everything in life, creations of joy and heaven and peace to be. I just could not get over the taste of that. And one thing that was really unique about it was obviously the beer. Cooking with Guinness just kind of blew my freaking mind away. I will say this though, the cheese, while delicious, was not necessary. You could easily omit the cheese. Honestly, having the 2 cheeses, like, I kind of found myself pulling some of it off because everything on its own was so good. So I felt like maybe going into it, I thought cheese would be a good idea, but after I tasted all the food I made, I was like, I don't even need the cheese. Get it out of there. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please like and subscribe. Try to cook with beer. Of course, you're cooking the alcohol out, but cook responsibly and do your thing.
That's what Grandma always said.
Yeah.
Married for over 50 years.
Trap the head and suck the dark stuff through it.
Waiting is the hardest part.
Damn the torpedoes.